I'd like to thank the organizers for having me here today, and I'd also like to thank you for your gender balance in the speakers, especially in a room that is dominated by a lot of men. So I would support the rector's decision, hopefully, to create maybe a more diverse photo up on these walls. But I'm here to talk about maybe the success stories of small individuals, of young people who maybe haven't had the chance to have the stage here today or haven't had the chance to have the stage at all. I'd like to remind you that 4 in 10 people, 42% of the global population is under the age of 25. So thank you for hosting this event in a university. As Liam said too, it's very fitting to have the event hosted here. Transformation can't happen without young people, so to have them in the room is very, very important. I usually do a little exercise in which I ask everybody over the age of 25 to stand up and look around them and talk to the people who are sitting down. But I don't think I'll do this here because I can see a lot of young faces. So I just want to remind everybody that we're so privileged to be here right now. We're privileged to be in this room, and we're privileged to stand and sit and listen to people in a university. We must not forget the rural women and young people in sub-Saharan Africa who are experiencing the direct effects of what we've been talking about today and who do not have the stage. And yet, every year, according to UNICEF, 20 million babies are born underweight. 3.2 million children under the age of 5 die each year in sub-Saharan Africa. That's about half of the world's deaths in this age group. We've known, you've known for about 50 to 60 years now that climate disruption was going to have a devastating impact on our food system. So it's an injustice that we have to gather here today to fight to keep people alive. This planet thrived before us and it'll thrive after us, so the only things we're killing right now are ourselves and the unfortunate beings that share our planet with us. I started my journey in science, really. I'm 22, so I'm in my 3rd year of university studying international development and food policy, so I'm very much at the beginning of my journey too, but I started within science. I started with DIY science because I hated school. I used to enter science competitions for a few days off school, really, and I happened to be quite good at it. That's where I got interested in the food system. Myself and 2 others created a project that became quite popular. We used a naturally occurring bacteria to speed up the germination rate of crops like barley, wheat, and oats, and we did this using polystyrene fish boxes, a thermostat, and a light bulb to be our incubators, and just kind of loads of DIY science like that. But it kind of brought us into a whirlwind of different science competitions like the EU Contest for Young Scientists and the Google Science Fair in amazing Silicon Valley. And then I ended up in a whirlwind of places and rooms that I felt where I didn't belong. A lot of rooms where I was the young person that ticked off their box of youth diversity, in which my head was kind of tapped and well done, congratulations for being here, but move along now. I was labeled by the UN as that very long title, and I was at the start of the SDGs in 2015, but after that event I swore that I wouldn't go back. Myself and 5 other young people were sitting in a room in which we were told we'd be given a chance to speak, and at the end of the event, one of the logistics people came up to us and said, "I'm sorry, we don't have time. We don't have time for you to talk." And that was devastating, to be in what I considered an ivory tower that I had just gained access to with all these other young people, and yet we were told we don't have time for you. But I'm happy to say things have changed. I went back for UN Week last year, and it was really exciting to see more young people in the room and more young people speaking, but still the diversity isn't there. We all saw the newspaper clipping of that poor young woman from Africa who was cut out of the photo. you don't gain diversity if you exclude other people. Going off topic. So I'm given the question of how are youth movements transform the food system? And it's such a broad question for me to answer, so I don't think I can answer it completely. But young people today are faced, 10 minutes. Young people today are faced with rising levels of both obesity and malnutrition, as well as climate disruption. This has only made us more angry and motivated than ever to change the food system and to hold big corporations and the people making the decisions accountable. Young people are using science, business, art, creativity to create change. Primary and secondary school students are doing what I did and using science as a way to explore creativity within the food system. I've been part of 2 different competitions, agricultural competitions, in which the private sector have given young people the stage. The Thought for Food Summit, which is a challenge which calls on the next generation of food and ag entrepreneurs to create sustainable solutions for more resilient food systems. A project that I really liked that came from this was called Agri Man, and it was created by a team in Kenya who saw that there were a lot of superheroes about for young people to gain motivation from, but no agricultural superheroes. So they created Agri Man, and they dress up in this really cool superhero green costume and go into primary schools and secondary schools within Africa and teach them how to create their own food and plant their own food, I should say, and how to eat responsibly and sustainably. So that's one way. The Youth Ag Summit, which is Bayer's competition in which they give young people the stage, which I had the pleasure of being part of, a platform for change which gathers the agricultural leaders of tomorrow, young people, to put them at the forefront of system change. And from there, myself and 7 others came up with Agri Corps. Agricultural Corps, KUA, is the Swahili word for growth, or Kenya Uplifting Agriculture. And I was put with 7 other young people from across the globe, and one such woman, my teammate, Rispa, was studying law in Kenyatta University, and that's where we decided to place our social entrepreneurship. Agri Corps is an online platform which uses people who are already in the university system. So they're volunteers to our system, and they go out to rural areas of Kenya and talk with the small-scale agriculturalists to find out what's missing from their line of work, and then they go back to the university and try and work on that. And I think it's really important to note that small-scale agriculturalists in rural Kenya, they're women over the age of 50, and they're organic. I think organic was mentioned before, and a really interesting comparison is that the majority of organic farmers within Ireland are men over the age of 50. So it's a really interesting dynamic to work in. Another is Food Dudes. It's an Irish initiative that was created by secondary school students, but also with the Irish government. And it's an initiative that brings veg and fruit into the classroom, and you tick off a box once you've eaten, you gain a little prize. What's funny about this was that my school was the pilot school, and we were given a little bag of turnips, and everybody thought they were chips, and then we bit into them and found out that they weren't chips. So there's holes to the system, but it's an interesting one, and it's growing quite rapidly. I'd like to pull on what Ben said earlier in a previous panel about media, and Hege mentioned it as well, and about how the media works with the food system and with young people. As was mentioned previously, the Eat Lancet report came out, and that there was a very, very small fact in the middle of the report that said we need to cut red meat consumption down to 0. And the media in Ireland, I don't know about it here, but it really highlighted that and took it out of proportion. And a lot of farmers became really upset about this. They thought their livelihoods were being taken away from them. And then at the start or the middle of last year, My university organized a Lancet and Farmers talk with lecturers, and we invited farmers into the room to speak with one of the writers of the Eat Lancet report. And it was interesting to see the conversation that occurred, because when farmers were part of the conversation to talk about the report, these farmers were like, well, actually, I've been a farmer, my family's been a farmer for about 45, 50, 60 years even, and we were sustainable before the rise of the Industrial Revolution, and we can be sustainable again. We didn't know that's what you meant. So it's using the media in a new way, and it was the students' idea to do this. So students can be creative if they're given the opportunity to be, and if they're given the opportunity to be part of solutions that can really cause conversations that are out of the norm. I want to also talk about the Scaling Up Nutrition movement that I became a part of in October. It's the first time they've had a young person as part of their lead group. I'm fighting for a second, don't worry. But we also have Sun youth leaders, and their stories are really incredible, and I was just messaging with them on WhatsApp a minute ago to try and get a few of stories of what they're doing currently. So Florence Simbona from Rwanda, who's a 24-year-old medicine student, talks about health and nutrition in different organizations, and just yesterday morning she was speaking at Toyota in Rwanda about what they can do to change their diets and improve their nutrition in a work setting. Webster from Zimbabwe gives talks about breastfeeding awareness at boys' schools, and he did this last Thursday and does it, and we'll do another one in 2 weeks' time. There have been movements in which graffiti has been done on walls around school buildings to improve nutrition and to create sustainable messages to the people walking by. But when I speak to these Sun youth leaders, I had the pleasure of meeting them in Nepal in November. They said that they were actually really upset, and I said, why? You're doing such amazing things. And they said, we feel like we're being left behind. The climate change movement is so fast, and it's really hit high levels in the past year, that they feel like the food system, nutrition, and agricultural sector has really lost its way, and it's not part of the conversation. They work individually, but they want to be part of this fast-paced movement because agriculture, nutrition, there's food sovereignty mentioned, even seed sovereignty is the basis of our livelihoods. And they're upset that they don't feel the support that other people and other activists have felt. And really fast, in conclusion, the harsh realities of food. Food banks are being set up in universities by students for students because a healthy diet at the moment is a luxury. Food is too expensive. Students can't afford food. Parents, families in low-income areas can't afford food, and this is a reality. The climate movement has gained incredible amounts of mainstream online media attention, which has changed governmental themes and thoughts. But again, the food system fight has lost its way. The public knowledge of the food system isn't there, even though there's huge passion by young people to create change in our food system. So my ask from the big people in the room today is to support individual young people and youth movements in their fight to change the food system. Thank you.